Welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I'm so excited because we are talking in women in business this week. And I have joining me by phone Jessica Fialkovich. She is with Transworld Business Advisors in the Rocky Mountain region. How are you doing, Jessica?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yes, our pleasure. So the reason that we picked you to have you on the show is because you have an extensive business background, which is exciting stuff. So if you don't mind talking a little bit about your career along the way and how you ended up at Transworld.
Yeah, so I'm originally from New Jersey. I moved out to Colorado in 2008. But I started my career after I graduated college. I graduated with a degree in international business and marketing and started in the professional sports industry. I was working with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Philadelphia Flyers for a number of years before I was recruited to come out and work in commercial real estate development in Aspen, actually, which is also a dream of mine. Like, I grew up skiing and hiking and stuff, so to come and live in Aspen for a few years was just like a total dream come true. So that was in 2008, though, and the economy started going down, and really the company wasn't doing that well. So myself and my then boyfriend, now husband, were working in the same business together, and we decided to leave and kind of start our own thing. And at the time, we were 25 years old, and we're like, oh, it would be kind of fun to sell wine. So we started this wine store, and we actually relocated down to Florida for a couple of years for it. And it was a lot of fun, but I really wanted to get back into more of a professional business environment, but I also really wanted to get back to Colorado. I was like, wow, that was a big mistake from leaving. So we went to put it on the market to sell it after about 2.5 years, and, didn't really know the process. We were connected with a broker from like a referral source, a business broker, and it was a financially good experience, but it wasn't a great experience overall. It was a very challenging process to work through. It was way more emotional than I expected it to be, and we really didn't get the service or support from our business brokers that I was looking for and hoping for. So after that sale, that was really what inspired me to get into the industries. I really wanted to work with small business owners and help them understand what that process looks like when, you're just kind of done with your business and ready to move on to the next thing, and how you transition it and how you sell it. So at that point, we moved back to Colorado in 2012 and founded our business brokerage firm, which is called Transworld Business Advisors.
Wonderful. And so that has been quite a journey for you, going from sports to real estate to wine and spirits. I'm sure that you've got a ton of experience, right?
Yeah, I've got a lot of different things, and it's funny. Like, I think when you get older, you start connecting some dots through your career and different things. And I was so young when I was in the sports industry, and my main focus was like get into marketing, do marketing, and all this stuff. And I was actually, my first job was in a sales department as a sales administrator, and kind of manipulated data and helped support the sales team and stuff. And now I look back on it, and I was like, God, that experience was so powerful, because now my business is running a sales organization. All we do is sales, So we run, I have 14 sales reps that work for me. And, so I look back at that experience, and it was about what I learned about their training programs and recruiting programs, and, how to collect data and use data. And, I mean, there's just so much I've learned from that experience. And I think over time, you get to see, like, in your past, like, those little connections that help you get to the place where you are.
That is wonderful and very well said. I don't think that we go through life very often going through things without that helping us on the other end, right?
Yeah, definitely. Everything, I'm a big believer of, like, everything happens for a reason.
I agree wholeheartedly with you on that. Let's talk a little bit about Transworld Business Advisors. And so you're in the Rocky Mountain region. Is this a national company?
Yeah, so actually Transworld is a franchise. So it's a global franchise, and they're based out of West Palm Beach in Florida. They've been around for actually 40 years next year, so planning on celebrating our 40th anniversary in 2019. But my husband and I acquired the rights, or the franchise rights, for most of the state of Colorado. So we have offices up and down the Front Range. But why we did that was really because we were looking for the support of a larger organization, but with the ability to run it like a local company. And so we talk a lot about, we're kind of global with local at the same time. So while it's owned and operated wholly by me, and, we're Colorado focused, we have a database of hundreds of thousands of buyers worldwide looking for businesses and looking to relocate to Colorado. And, it's peers all around the world in different markets that I can talk to and can be very supportive. So it's been an interesting relationship because it's my first experience in the franchise world, but it's been very beneficial for us.
I would imagine. Well, yeah, because it sort of gives you, and not that you haven't owned your own business before, but you still have that mentality a little bit of owning your own business, so you can give legit personal advice to these people that are seeking you guys out, correct?
Correct, yeah. So, Transworld as a whole, so we work with entrepreneurs that have companies performing from 0 to 10 million in revenue, and we help them buy or sell their companies in what we call the Rocky Mountain region. So it's mainly Colorado. We also do some work in New Mexico and Wyoming. And, just in the last 5 years, we've closed over $65 million transactions and 160 businesses. And just not myself, but a lot of my team members have owned businesses in the past, and they've bought and sold businesses in the past. So that helps us a lot because as much as you think selling a business would be very financial, very analytical transaction, much like my own experience, there's a lot of emotion tied into it, especially when you've built something up, over your career or even your whole life, and then you go to sell it. That can be an emotional process. So it's been helpful for both myself and my team to know where our clients are coming from, having those experiences ourselves.
Absolutely. Do you mind talking a little bit about your own experience with moving on? You mentioned a couple times that it was a little emotional. Was that surprising to you, and why so surprising?
Yeah, I think it was surprising, and people told me what happened, but you really don't believe anything until it happens to you. But at that point, so we're in the wine business, and I was overall done with the business. I was done with the industry. It was funny when I got into it. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's gonna be so much fun! You get to drink wine all day." I was done with drinking wine all day. Like that actually is not that much fun. And like I said, I was done with the market too. I was ready to get out of Florida. So I was so focused on getting out that I really didn't think there would be any kind of remorse in the sale. And there really wasn't remorse, but I think as business owners, sometimes we forget how much of our identity and role is tied up into the company. Logistically every day for 8 to 10 hours a day, my whole life was that business. And then just one day it stops. And literally it just stops overnight. And yeah, there's a transition period where the buyer needed my help and stuff like that. But it literally went from a 60-hour-a-week commitment to like 5 hours overnight. And your whole role goes away. You're no longer the Cantids owner or the owner of XY business. And that's sometimes a struggle to deal with, especially it was harder for me, and I see some of our clients that struggle with it more, is that I didn't have anything to run to. Like I was just running away from the business, running away from Florida, but I didn't have any solid plans to run to in the future. So my focus was really on nothing at that point. So that was like an emotional struggle, and it's almost kind of like suffering a loss. But, now I know for going through that experience that for me personally, and I've seen with some of our clients too, is that, if I ever go through a transaction in the future again, that I want to have not my next business set up, but I want to at least have a project that I'm running towards. Maybe it's working with a nonprofit or planning a big family trip or something that I can move my focus towards.
Exactly. And is that, besides that advice to give to your other clients, is there anything else that you could offer them to help get over that hump?
Yeah, I think being part of there's different business owners, I call them support groups, but they're really mastermind groups. And Denver and Boulder have like an amazing amount of resources like that. But I myself, I'm part of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a group of entrepreneurs that support each other, and there's other ones like Vistage and stuff like that. And everything that you communicate in those groups is 100% confidential. So it's really nice to have that sounding board. And is super helpful if you're going through a transaction with that emotional stuff, to have people that you can talk to about it. But even if it's not, if you're just having a struggle in your business or life, it's just a good option to have people that you trust and you can, talk about things that are going on in the company.
Wonderful. I'm going to switch gears here on you and ask a little bit about some trends within the market of owning your small business and how you guys are doing at Transworld.
Yeah, so, Denver and Colorado has been an amazing growth market for the last 5 years. So we've been doing great. We actually became the number one franchise office in the world in 2016. We did it again in 2017, and we're on pace to do it for this year. So we've been doing great. And I just think that the business brokerage market in general is really strong right now. So like what we're starting to focus on is we're seeing what we're calling in the industry the seller tsunami, but about 50% of small businesses are owned by the baby boomers. So we're starting to see them exit or sell their businesses, and that trend's really going to continue for the next 15-ish years. So it's starting to increase the volume of businesses in the market, which for right now, it's a slow increase. I mean, we're talking about I think it's 7% increase year over year of the number of deals getting done. So it's manageable, which is supporting, our industry and help growing our industry too. But that could change in the coming years, depending on how many business owners in that generation exit at one time.
Interesting. And I like your term seller tsunami. That tickles me.
Yeah, and that's not our term. It's floating around in the industry, so we don't use it, but it's a funny way of defining what's about to happen. So
yeah. So so you help people sell their businesses. Do you also help people buy?
Yes, yeah, we do. So we work with buyers in a number of different ways. Most of our relationships are the seller's advisor, but once in a while we'll work as a buyer advisor. But in a deal, we're going to be working with both sides either way. So we have locally, we're working with about 15,000-ish buyers that are active in the state of Colorado. And then nationally, like I said, we've got hundreds of thousands in our database. But we help them figure out what is the process to buy a business, because it's not a well-defined process, and it's a process many people don't go through a lot in life. Sometimes only do it once. So we help them understand the process. We connect them to resources like legal and financing and things like that. And then ultimately we guide them through the deal. So from the beginning of when they're searching for a business to the final days when they're closing on the sale.
Wonderful. Do you have any favorite stories that you've come in contact with so far? And I know that you can't give client information, and we respect and understand that wholeheartedly. But was there a story that stuck out to you for seeing a happy client?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many great stories. One that sticks out in my mind, and this is because, my husband got to work with this client closely, but he was an immigrant from the Czech Republic years ago, like 20 years ago or something like that. And he moved out to Colorado, and he founded a roofing company, and he just was the money in his pocket, literally a couple $100, and just built this roofing company up and up and up over the years. And we were able to sell it for him a couple of years ago. And the sale was, I'd say it was a decent sale. It was about $1.5 million in cash that he sold it for. And he was able to go back to the Czech Republic and buy homes for his family and retire there. And it was just such a great story of somebody that, came into the market with literally no money in their pocket, built something, created it, and then was able to go back and establish a legacy for his family. And those are the kind of stories that I love to see happen the most. We have clients that afterwards, we have one client right now that's road tripping across northern Canada and into Alaska, and some of those pictures from a road trip, and it's been a lifelong dream for him to do stuff like that. So there's, we have another one that just retired in Mexico. So it's just those are really fun stories to see what people do afterwards.
That is really exciting, and I love that you have such a great relationship that people are sending you pictures, right, of their own life. That's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, these deals typically take anywhere between 6 and sometimes 12 or 18 months, and we're working closely with these people for that period of time. And like I said, it's a pretty emotional period. So, we get to know our clients pretty intimately over that time.
I would imagine that each client is a little bit different and you may not have a general process. But if you do, could you walk me through a process of trying to sell my business? Would that be would that be possible? Obviously, each client's different, but
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, I'll walk you through. So actually, we have a pretty defined process. And the reason we keep it so defined and so tight is because everything in every deal can be so different that at least if the process is the same, there's some consistency for us and also the clients that we can give, some type of like every human being needs some level of certainty, right? So if we can tell them everything else is going to happen differently in this deal, but the process is going to be exactly the same as every other deal, at least we can give them that certainty. So the process usually starts with a client contacting us and being ready to sell their company. Some clients will contact us a year or two ahead and saying like, hey, what do I have to prep to sell? But really it's for the bulk of it, it's like, all right, I'm ready to go now. Let's put my deal in the market. So we do a little of our own due diligence on the deal. So we'll do evaluation. We'll come up with a marketing plan of how we think this business is going to be sold and identifying what we call as the most probable buyer. So that takes a couple weeks, and we'll present that to the client and present our strategy, and then we'll take the deal to market. Once the deal's on the market, it's marketed in a confidential manner. So, like, we would never say, Starbucks on 6th and Grin is for sale. We'd say, like, a coffee shop in Denver is for sale. And what we do there is we solicit buyer interest and start vetting buyers. So we'll talk to buyers. We talk to every buyer that inquires, and we'll talk to them about how much money they have and where it's coming from. So one, are they financially qualified? Two, what are the motivations behind buying a business? We're trying to vet out, especially any competitors that are trying to just steal trade secrets. But, what's their motivation? Why do they want to buy? And then, what are their skills and intentions for the business after? So a lot of things that gets missed is a lot of business owners, when they want to sell, they want to cash out and make money, but I'd say probably the most important thing to our clients is legacy of the business. So when we're vetting these buyers, we want to figure out, what is their intention with the business, because that's very important to our seller. So once we get through and we've vetted some buyers, we'll solicit offers for the business, and we'll vet each offer, and the seller will decide which offer is best for them. And that's not just based on price, but like we talked about, like maybe legacy and maybe some of the time commitments involved in the transaction too. And then we enter a period called due diligence, which is basically the inspection period for the buyer. So the buyer then gets to inspect and vet any claims the seller has made, kind of like inspecting a house, and you can raise objections and things like that. And then once all of that's resolved, then we go to closing. And closing could be anywhere from 2 weeks if it's a cash and seller carry deal to 60 days if there's some more complex financing structures in place, like an SBA loan.
that is very cool. I appreciate that. And that is a pretty thorough overview of how that works. Couple of questions for you. You mentioned somebody buying trade secrets, and that is something I guess I wouldn't have that would have never crossed my mind. But have you run into that ever? That somebody was malintent looking at a business?
Yeah, I mean, you run into them once in a while. I think we're very lucky in Colorado that in general, like, I think our business community is very friendly, and we don't see a lot of that in our marketplace. So I think, like, in the, 160 deals plus we've done in the last few years, like, I think I've run into it once or twice. It's pretty low, but we always want to take that extra step because we do have a lot of competitors that buy each other's businesses, and they do it for a number of good reasons, right? Like entering a new market or acquiring a new product or sometimes even acquiring a staff. Those are all good reasons, but we do need to be extra careful in those deals to make sure we have legal documentation and all that kind of stuff to make sure that the trade secrets basically aren't just stolen. So.
Yeah, and I would agree with you that Colorado's business environment is super supportive of each other. That's one thing. Everyone that I've had in here, from a business, small or large, we all take care of each other. And the other thing I wanted to ask, have you run into a situation where a small business is bought by a large corporation? Is that a different process?
So it's definitely a different process. And I think, the funny thing about small business is depending on who you talk to, the box of small business gets wider and wider, right? So in general, like we're talking about these deals, we're talking about companies that do 0 to 10 million in revenue and typically make less than a million in earnings. And those types of companies are often not bought by large corporations. And if you think about it, these large corporations have full M&A departments. So yeah, the deal runs totally differently. But to support like the salaries of the M&A and the advisors that they have on contract, they really need to be acquiring businesses that make 5 to 10 million minimum in cash flow. So they have that return on investment. But yeah, if you had a small business acquired by a larger corporation, it's a much different process. It's run more like an auction process, and the buyer's in much more control. But typically you don't see that in these smaller deals.
I would imagine not. It's pretty atypical for a small business to be bought out by a larger one because it's not seen as a competition necessarily, right?
Right. And it comes back to that return on investment. It does cost a lot of money to get a deal done, especially if you're a larger corporation. So you have to see a return based on the earnings of the new company you're acquiring. So if it's not large enough to support that return, they really won't pursue it.
Gotcha. Well, we have about 3 minutes left in this segment. Jessica, I want to ask you a little bit about public policy and legislation, and if you personally or any of your clients have run into any issues with public policy.
Not recently. I mean, I think being in the business that we're in, less government intervention is always better because it adds additional steps. Like we have to do things like transferring business license and liquor license and cannabis license and that kind of stuff. So anything that, less overreach is always better because it helps the deals go more smoothly. But, and as far as the changes that have been made in the state in the last few years, we haven't really seen anything affect us at all, which is good, which means that the state's still very business friendly and still very supportive of the small business community.
Which is wonderful. I agree with you on that aspect. So in the last couple minutes here, I want to ask you, if I am looking to sell, what do I need to get in order on my end to start that process?
Yeah, so I always tell people there's really 3 things that you should focus on, and you can start these between 1 and 3 years out from selling. You can start it from day one of your business, which is great. But if you give yourself at least 12 months, there's some things you can clean up in the business to get ready to sell. And the first is proper books and records or bookkeeping. So when we're in that inspection period with a buyer, one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to want to inspect the profit and loss statements, balance sheets, and tax returns, and ultimately the bank statements for the business. So making sure they all tie back together and the bookkeeping process gets consistent over time, that'll really increase the value of a business and also the likelihood it would sell. The second is having processes and systems in your business. So if you think about it, you're going to leave your business permanently. So if you can document everything you do and how you do it in your business, so it's easier to transition to either employees or the new owner, that also increases the value. And the last is, I say work yourself out of your job. But basically, as the owner, get yourself out of the day-to-day operations, especially anything that's client interfacing over time is going to increase the value of the business, but also reduce the risk for the buyer acquiring it. So, if I own a business and Alex, you only do business with me because it's me, that's never a good thing in a sale, right? So if I can get you hooked on doing business with the company and my team, that's an easier business to transfer. So that also increases value too.
Wonderful. Great pieces of advice. We are going to take a quick break here on Connect and Collaborate. Like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. Check out cobrt.com/radio-podcast for this show and more. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and this week we are talking women in business, which is very exciting. I have with me by phone Jessica Fialkovich with Transworld Business Advisors in the Rocky Mountain region. Thank you so much again for joining me, Jessica.
Thanks so much, Alex.
Yes, and so we talked all about Transworld Business Advisors and your background in the last segment. I'm going to switch gears yet again on us, and we're going to focus on the women in business aspect for this segment. So as we know, there's lots of things in the business world that women have to face that men don't. And not saying that men don't have certain challenges themselves, but women have a unique experience, right? We are coming up aces right now in the business world.
Yeah, definitely a unique experience that women face in the business environment.
Exactly. So as we know, you went from a sports industry to real estate to wine and spirits. You went from brokerage, and now you own your own business for Transworld M&A. So you've been in a lot of male-dominated industries throughout your career. Do you mind starting with your sports background and talk a little bit about how that experience was?
Yeah, so I mean, every industry I've worked in has been male dominated, and it's funny, I really haven't again put that together till later in life, but sports is, especially in professional sports, so if we're talking about the NFL, NHL, NBA, anything like that, very male dominated, and mainly because mostly men are interested in sports, right? So if you talk to any, college guys, probably their dream job is to work in the NFL. So it was definitely a great experience for me. I've always looked at working in male-dominated industries as an advantage, not a disadvantage. So I've always enjoyed the process. Not that it hasn't been challenging, but it's always been fun and a different type of challenge for me to approach it. But in sports, like I found there was some type of like what you would call like male culture or bro culture around that industry. But it's also because sports was unique in that it's not just male dominated in the people that you work with, but it's also male dominated in the clients that you're serving. So like most of the season ticket holders were men. So like that whole culture is just a little bit different than any other industry that you kind of enter into.
Yeah, that's well, and every business is going to have a little bit of a male presence, right? There's not a whole lot of industries out there that are simply women-led. I guess I want to talk to you a little bit about breaking through that glass ceiling, and did you have any personal struggles with trying to make yourself heard?
So I'd say, the one thing I did, and again, I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but, I sought out mentors very early in my career, and both men and women, so I could get different perspectives. And I didn't really know I was using it as a strategy at the time, but it was just something I felt like I needed to do. So, two of my different bosses, both male, were very integral in my development in the sports industry. And then there was a woman that worked in a senior leadership role in the company as well that I didn't report to, that we would connect a couple times a quarter as well. And they really helped me navigate and understand how I had to be heard. So, what I've seen both with myself and some other women sometimes is when you want to be heard in an industry or in a room full of men, there's this balance between being underconfident and being overconfident. And now I kind of call it for myself as confident humility, where like you have the ability to speak up and say your independent thoughts, but also realize that other opinions have to be heard and the fact that you could be wrong, right? And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn, but I think sometimes I overstepped and went into that overconfident role. And that also hurts you from being heard too, right? It's almost as bad as if not speaking up to begin with, because you're coming across and seeing overconfident, and especially if you're younger in the industry, maybe inexperienced. So my mentors really helped me balance that confident humility, and when is the right time to speak up and when is the right time to listen to others' thoughts as well.
That is definitely a hard balance. And I've not heard the term confident humility, but I have written that down. I'm saving that for myself. That's very good advice. I love that because that is something I struggle with on a daily basis, whether it's in my professional or personal life, that overconfidence versus underconfidence. It's hard to maintain that balance.
Yeah, and sometimes I think, underconfidence is tied to appearing to be overconfident, right? I think as you get more confident in your skills and your thought in your career and in life, that need to be overconfident in a conversation kind of goes away, because in your own self that you know what you're talking about, so you don't have to kind of give that appearance.
I like that. So I have here in front of me that you are also a co-owner of 2 women-owned businesses. Do you mind talking a little bit about the difference between being in a male-dominated field versus working with with the women-owned businesses? Or are there differences? Perhaps it's more alike than I thought.
Yeah, so both of the businesses that I own, so Transworld is a women-owned business. So I co-own it with my husband, but I'm the majority shareholder. And then my sister and I also own a virtual assistant business. So that's 100% women-owned. And that's actually, right now, I think our staff's 100% women, too, just by coincidence, not because we were trying to do that. There's, from a leadership and a strategy perspective of owning businesses, I don't think there's a difference, right? So, a business, if you look at a business as an asset or an entity, the things that you need to do to operate that business and the strategy behind it really doesn't change based on who is in ownership or what industry you're in or anything like that. I think working in male versus women-dominated industries differ a little bit. So in Transworld, we're a very male-dominated industry. M&A, same thing. A lot of people that work in the industry are men. A lot of our clients are men, like a very large proportion. Whereas on the virtual assistant side and personal assistant business, like I said, all of our staff is women. Most of our clients are women. And that does bring out differences. Men, and this isn't something new, but I think men in communication are much more direct. And that's actually something I struggle with in the virtual assistant business because I've been in that world for so long that I'm very direct and to the point. So sometimes I lose my empathy or sometimes softening statements. That is more the communication style that women have. So there's that, men are, like, I typically see too in like Transworld, faster decisions are made. And like when a decision is made, like we're going to go and we're going to do that. Whereas in the virtual assistant business, we'll talk about a decision a lot longer. And it won't be like months or years, but it might be like a 10-minute conversation versus a 2-meeting conversation in the other business. So we'll be very thoughtful in the decisions that we're going to make, and the plan will be very solid, whereas in Transworld there might not be a plan. Like, we have the goal, let's just go for it. So those are kind of the 2 main differences I see between the 2 different companies and how they run.
Awesome. I want to talk to you a little bit, too, that you are on the steering committee for Women of M&A.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
How's that been?
Yeah. It's awesome. So Women of M&A is a community group that was founded by Carrie Crandall, and it's for women working in the M&A industry, so mergers and acquisitions. And so you've got people that are investment bankers, business brokers like myself, attorneys, but it is funny because M&A is very male-dominated, and it's not uncommon to walk into a room and be literally the only woman in a room of 50 or 60 people at a networking event in M&A. Or if you're in the deal, like there might be 8 people working in the deal and there's only 1 woman. So it's nice to come together, and we come together quarterly, and we do learning events and community engagement events. We do serve events where we kind of work with a nonprofit in the community. But it's great for us, too, because we can talk about the deal world and deals from our perspective without, maybe getting shot down on an idea or something like that. It's also, like I said, men communicate, especially in the deal world, very direct, very straightforward. Let's go for this plan. It's also an arena where we can sit and we can talk through what's going on in a deal together a little bit more, and maybe ruminate on, how things could be done differently, or, maybe something's not going right, and just get advice. So it's not unlike any other mastermind group or any other, an entrepreneur support organization, but it's specifically for women in the M&A industry. So it's very narrowed and niched. So everyone's going through the same experiences at the same time.
Which is wonderful, right, to be able to share that, whether it's from a mastermind group or a specific women of a certain industry type of group. It's nice to have that support system in place that you can bounce ideas off of people.
Yes, exactly.
So I want to ask you a little bit about, I don't know if you've faced this personally, but in my professional career, the struggle to be taken seriously, whether that's during an internal meeting or sometimes with clients. I've run into issues where I'm not heard sometimes, and I know we talked about the confident humility, but is there any advice for making sure that you're taken seriously at the table?
Yeah, I think you have to get to know the culture of any industry a little bit. And there's just, I think certain things that I've learned that you have to do in order to have that appearance. So like in M&A is a suit and tie industry, right? So going to any meeting, and I really don't love dressing up. Like if you catch me in my office, most days I'm in black jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers. But if I'm going to a meeting with the M&A industry with attorneys or anything like that, I'm fully professionally business dressed. So I think there's certain things like that you have to learn about an industry. Likewise, we do a lot of deals in construction, and if I ever show up to a meeting with a bunch of construction dudes in a suit, it's not going to go over well. That's the time for my jeans and my boots. So I think there's things like that you have to understand the culture, and sometimes that takes time and going to networking events in the industry or having a mentor within the industry that tell you a little bit about what that culture is going to be. I'm also a big research person, so I like to research and know what I'm talking about. So I have that confident humility going into any meeting, and I can always pull the research or stats or anything to support any of the arguments or points that I'm trying to make, to give some more objective data to back up any of the statements that I'm claiming or something like that.
Does that feel frustrating sometimes to have to do that? Or is that simply just something that you've honed over the years?
You know what? It doesn't feel frustrating to me. And the further and further I get into my career is what I find is men can pull off that being heard thing for a little while. But if they don't do the same tactics, if they don't back up their claims with research or hard data, if they don't assimilate it into the culture of the industry like other people do, they're not going to be heard for long, and they're not going to be taken seriously for long. So the further and further I get into my career, it's women might have to do a little bit more work up front, but once you establish that credibility, it's there. Whereas men, if they don't do the same tactics, that credibility disappears really fast.
Awesome. That is good to know. I want to talk a little bit, too, about owning your own accomplishments as a woman. Personally, I've seen a lot of men be able to own their accomplishments without coming across as cocky, right? They have that confidence, whereas women can be seen as almost bragging. And yeah, do you have that same struggle or any advice on that?
Yeah, I just found one. I don't know if I have any great So, when we start this conversation and you're doing the intro, I was like, well, I don't love talking about myself. And so it's something that I definitely struggle with. And, I'm not sure why. That might be a topic for my therapist and me to kind of dive into. But, yeah, owning accomplishments, it's still very hard for me to, say, oh, well, we're the number one franchise office in the world. That's just really a hard accomplishment for me to say, and I don't know why.
Go ahead and say that again. You're the number one franchise company in the world? That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I think women do struggle with that a little bit more, and I think it's because, in general, it goes back to women in general, right? I'm not trying to pin anybody into a box.
Absolutely.
But just being a little bit less confident than men are, soft-spoken. Like I always say to my husband, like he'll own all of our accomplishments. And I always say, well, I'm like the whale. The whale always flies under the radar. You never know how big the whale is because they're always, under the surf line, right? And that's kind of like how I like to be. But I think most women are like that, and that's not necessarily always a good thing.
Right. That's because a lot of times I think women. I know personally for myself, I like to think that my accomplishments should speak for themselves. Right. What I've done is shown. I've done this. And maybe my name is on it, maybe it's not, but somebody somewhere knows that I did that, and I know that I did that. I don't necessarily need to make that a public factor, right? But as you mentioned, there is a little bit of a struggle there for, because maybe we didn't put our name on that, the next person that we're going to see doesn't know about that, and that can hurt you in the long run. Well, she doesn't have any accomplishments under her belt, when really, you do have a lot, you just haven't put it out there.
Yeah, I think there's putting it out there. Then I think, the other thing that I think we all need to step up and own our accomplishments too is because there's so much out there that people don't read anymore, right? So, I always think, it's in my bio, it's on my website, they'll read it. Like, no, there's so much information, people don't have time to read all that stuff. So, owning your own accomplishments in person and being able to talk about them and, whether it's in an interview for a job or on stage or anything like that, it's definitely something I need to personally work on, and I think in general women need to be more comfortable doing too. And I don't think this appearance of bragging and stuff. I think some people will judge and brag you, but I think anytime someone's going to do that, and that's really based in envy and anything else. But for the most part, I think people are really happy and proud of family members and friends when they've accomplished something, and they want them to claim those accomplishments.
Oh, absolutely. I will tell you, my mom is my number one fan.
Yeah, exactly. The people that you should care about will support you, and the people that you don't care about or shouldn't care about won't. So
exactly. I want to talk a little bit about this fear of failure, and I think that is a problem for everyone, right? Men and women alike. But it's got a different connotation for women in business because we already have to struggle to be heard in the first place, and so I think fear of failure is probably a bigger fall for women in general. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think definitely I do see it, and actually it was funny. I was talking to a group of women business owners about M&A, and one of the things I'm trying to get out right now is a lot of women business owners won't take a risk by buying or selling a company because of this fear of failure, and it's hurting them in their business success. But what I've seen is failure is tied to risk, right? So the more risk you take, the more chance there is for failure. But also the more risk you take, the more reward there is. And I think women in general, and I find myself in this camp often, is that we need more of that certainty in our life than men necessarily do. So that's the failure that kind of, if we have certainty that we're going to succeed, we're going to follow those paths more likely. Whereas if we're in a situation where there's not so much certainty that we're going to succeed, or there's going to be a perceived failure, that we won't kind of pursue those avenues. And it could be, because of us getting hurt, it could be more of a financial risk. There's a lot of different reasons that we might not pursue that. But I think just that drive of having certainty and having our support and structure kind of drives us to seek safer pursuits and less riskier ones, which ultimately have bigger rewards.
Absolutely. So we have about 5 minutes left here. I want to ask you for any personal advice, just a general overall women in business, whether you want to focus more on women in M&A. What is your one piece of advice that you would like to give other women?
So the biggest piece of advice I give other women, especially aspiring entrepreneurs or business women, is find mentors that are where you want to be. And it should always be a mix of both men and women because, unfortunately, there's still not a lot of women in the places that we as women want to go. So we would have to have a male mentor in that capacity. But if you find a mentor that's already where you want to be, they can give you all of the advice of how to get there. What's that path? What are the lessons they've already learned? Like, I'm a big believer in life's too short to learn all of your own lessons, right? So if you can learn lessons from somebody else's experience, failures, opportunities, all that stuff, you'll save yourself a lot of time and pain. And then once you find those mentor relationships, like cultivate them, give back, be an avid component, avid player in that relationship, and they'll help you get to where you want to go.
Lovely. Do you currently mentor anybody, or would you like to?
Yes, I do. I currently mentor 2 different business owners. One through the Women on the Rise program that's supported by the Comments on Champa, which is a great program. And if you're looking for a mentor, Women on the Rise, I think are going to do that annually, where they open up an application period for mentees and mentors. So that's a great program. So yeah, and if anybody is looking to connect with me, I can give you my contact information, and you can probably put it in the show notes. But right now I'm mentoring 2 different women, which is about my capacity.
Wonderful. I actually do want to ask you your contact information. You led me right to my last question here, and whether that's to get a hold of you for the women of M&A, or whether that's to get a hold of you at Transworld Business Advisors. Whatever contact information you'd like to share with us, I would love to share that with our audience.
Yeah. So if you're interested more in business brokerage, you can visit us at tworlddenver.com or contact us at 720-259-5099. And if you're looking to connect with me, I'm pretty active on both Instagram and LinkedIn. My Instagram handle's Fialkovich, and just search me on LinkedIn under my name and connect with me there.
Wonderful. So just in these last 2 minutes here, Jessica, any last-minute thoughts that you want to tie in, or anything else about Transworld that you would like our audience to know?
No, I just say, if you're a business owner, just educate yourself about the buy-sell process and learn how to buy or sell a business by connecting with a broker like myself, or, there's some great resources online. Biz Buy Sell is a great place to search for businesses for sale. But there's so much that we learn as business owners on how to start and grow a company. But this last phase of how to transition the company, whether it's to exit or to acquire a business because you're growing or something like that, there's not a lot of education on that, and there's a really big opportunity that a lot of business owners miss.
Wonderful. And one last question here for you. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
So I'm a really big Bruce Springsteen fan. So it's a unique superpower, but if there was a way that I could attend every single concert that he's ever performed, past and present, that would be my superpower. So I guess it's like time travel, kind of,
yeah.
But only time travel for very specific shows.
I love that. That is one answer I have definitely never heard. Any plans to see him in the future?
I just saw him on his Broadway show in July, which is my second time for the year, and then I'll probably wait till he wraps up. He's doing a Broadway show right now, so I'll probably wait till he wraps up that, and then hopefully he'll tour next year. Fingers crossed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessica. I appreciate you joining me today, especially talking about women in business. Again, if you need to get a brokerage you're looking to sell or buy a business, tworlddenver.com. And be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. Find this podcast and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. And while you're on the cobrt.com website, go ahead and sign up for our newsletter so you can keep up on our events. Thank you so much, Jessica. It's been wonderful having you on today.
Thank you, Alex. I've enjoyed it so much.
Have a great day.